Monday, July 28, 1986, started just like any other when 25-year-old Suzy Lamplugh, an ambitious estate agent in London, vanished without a trace. She had left her office to meet a mysterious client known only as Mr. Kipper for a property viewing in Fulham. Despite extensive investigations and media coverages, Suzy's disappearance remains one of the UK's most enduring unsolved mysteries. Suzy had been described as a vibrant young woman, full of life and ambition. Working at Sturgis estate agents in Fulham, she was known for her professionalism and dedication. Suzy noted in her office diary an appointment with Mr. Kipper at 12:45 p.m. to show a property at 37 Sherrills Road. Noted in her diary as O/S, indicating that a meeting was outside the property. This was a routine part of her job, and there was no indication that anything was amiss. At around that time, roughly 12:45 to 1 p.m, witnesses, including a neighbour who lived next door to the property, saw Suzy standing outside and appeared to be waiting for somebody. Shortly after, she was seen speaking with a man. And then a short while later, the two were spotted walking away together and getting into a car. The man was described as white, being between 25 and 30 years old, with a dark complexion, neatly swept back black hair, and was dressed sharply in a dark suit. The kind of look that people described as a public schoolboy. And curiously, he was holding a bottle of champagne with a ribbon tied around it. From here, events appear to take a far more sinister turn. At around 2 to 2:30 p.m, a man in the area reported seeing a couple arguing near where Suzy had been. Around that time, another witness saw Suzy's white Ford Fiesta being driven erratically away from Sherrills Road. There was a man in the passenger seat, and the two appeared to be arguing. The car was driving in such a way that the witness had to swerve to avoid a collision. Throughout the afternoon, Suzy's car was reportedly seen multiple times by various people, all in different places and at different times. But the sightings weren't consistent, and none gave a clear idea of what was actually happening. The most significant sighting came from Suzy's close friend, Barbara Whitefield. Unlike others, Barbara knew Suzy personally. She insisted she saw her driving up Fulham Palace Road at around 2:45 p.m. Again, there was a man in the car. Given Barbara's relationship with Suzy, the statement carried considerable weight. Back at the office, Suzy's colleagues were beginning to worry. She was meant to return after the viewing, but by 3:30 p.m. there was still no sign of her. They waited, hoping she might turn up, but by 4:30, 4 hours after she had left, there was still no sign of her. They drove to the Sherrills Road property to check if she was still there. She wasn't. An hour later, at 5:30 p.m, they phoned the police and reported her missing. It wasn't until 10 o'clock that night that a breakthrough came, of sorts. A police officer found Suzy's white Ford Fiesta parked on Stevenage Road, about 1.5 miles from the property. The car appeared to have been abandoned. Her purse was still inside, making a robbery an unlikely motive, but the keys were missing. The handbrake was off, almost like the car had been left in a hurry, but there were no signs of a struggle. No blood, no damage, just an empty car and a lot of questions. Initially, the police questioned those closest to her, including her 27-year-old stockbroker boyfriend and her male flatmate. Both provided solid alibis, backed by corroborating witnesses, eliminating them from suspicion. Suzy's 2-bedroom flat in Putney was thoroughly searched, but nothing unusual or suspicious was found. At the time, the press speculated wildly. One theory emerged from the client's name being Mr. Kipper, and it was suggested at the time by various media sources that if the first name was Dan, it would form the anagram kidnapper, although it's important to note that this was purely speculative. Then, things took an odd turn when Suzy's office manager revealed that just days before her disappearance, a mystery man had sent a bouquet of red roses to her office. In the weeks following her disappearance, the police released an image of Suzy to the press, but it became known that her hair had recently been dyed blonde just days before. The photograph they used featured her with dark brown hair, a discrepancy that drew attention to the fact that Suzy had changed her appearance shortly before vanishing. Without modern technology, investigators had to rely on a manual system, leading to a large number of potential leads that were difficult to track efficiently. Everything was filed using old-fashioned card index system, leading to a massive 26,000 cards being filled with potential leads. During this time, Suzy was officially classified as a missing person, not presumed a victim of foul play, which meant that known criminals in the area weren't considered prime suspects at first. One of the significant early leads came when a man reported that a BMW, abandoned for several months, had been left in the road and was registered to a Belgian man known as Mr. Kipper. The discovery raised hope that they had found a connection. However, the car's owner was located in Belgium, where he had a solid alibi for the day of Suzy's disappearance, and his BMW was confirmed to be in a garage in Belgium on that day. The man was eliminated as a suspect. 13 months after Suzy's disappearance, in June 1987, her mother publicly expressed her belief that Suzy was no longer alive, a heartbreaking statement that resonated deeply with the public. It wasn't until a year after her disappearance that the investigation began to zero in on a new suspect, John Cannan. The police had released an artist's impression of Mr. Kipper based on witness descriptions, and strikingly, it resembled Cannan, a suspected serial killer convicted of multiple serial abductions, amongst other horrible crimes, who was living in a nearby prison hostel at the time of Lamplug's disappearance. Cannan had a criminal history, including an attack on a woman in 1980 and, in 1981, an attack on a shopkeeper at knife point. At the time that Suzy went missing, he had been on day release from prison and was working as a porter in the area. In the months leading up to the disappearance, Cannan was frequently seen at wine bars in Fulham, some of which Suzy had visited herself. Cannan had a history of attempting to charm women with gestures like sending flowers, which added to the suspicion surrounding him. Allegedly, he even told people that he was interested in buying property in the area where Suzy lived, although these claims are largely unverified. The day that Cannan had been released from prison was just days before Suzy's disappearance, and he was seen in a pub in Putney, only a few miles away, and only a day before. Despite being a key suspect, there was not enough evidence to charge Cannan in connection with Suzy's disappearance. In 2007, DNA testing on a red Ford Sierra, previously owned by Cannan, showed both his and Suzy's DNA inside. However, the CPS concluded that this did not prove that they were together at the same time, so no charges were brought against him. In 2018, police carried out excavations at Cannan's mother's former home in Sutton Coldfield, but nothing was found. The prime suspect, John Cannan, later passed away in prison in 2024. Suzy's father, Richard Lamplugh, said that he was not mourning the loss of John Cannan, but had been left instead mourning the loss of him ever giving us closure. While the truth behind Suzy Lamplug's disappearance remains unsolved, her story has not been forgotten, and the Suzy Lamplugh Trust continues to honour her memory by making the world a safer place.